Hi everyone, Summer here with AstariaSen, and I wanted to talk about fairies, of course. One of the big things about June that I really enjoy is not just the summer solstice on the 21st, and that's a really big fairy day for me, but also June holds International Fairy Day on June 24th. And I thought that this month would be a perfect time to talk about some of the fairy things that are involved in my life. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about specific interactions that I do with the fae, because I do that off and on during my channel. More along the lines of my favorite books that I think that new and experienced fae lovers would enjoy, but also decks, and kind of just go from there and why I enjoy these ones specifically for my fairy interactions. So I want to start out with the books, because lots of people always ask, well, what books are you reading? How do you get information about fairies? How do you interact with fairies? How do you do this with fairies? How do you do that with fairies? Okay, so folklore is great, right? I love folklore and fairy tales because that includes fairies. Not all fairies. I mean, you get all sorts of things. You get the bad guys, the villains, the fae, you get the princesses, the princes, the knights, all of that kind of stuff, and you get political intrigue, and you get the what is it called? The themes of each one and stuff like that, which I'm not really looking for that. When I'm doing fairy research, I'm trying to look for very fairy specific stories, very fairy specific lore, which is there in folklore in a general fairy tale sense, in fairy tale folklore, but there's more than that. And so I have found a few books that have really helped me on my journey when I was beginning to work and understand and learn more about the Fae in their way. This is why, because I believe awareness is important. Acknowledging the Fae, acknowledging fairy, acknowledging their existence, and acknowledging what they do, past, present, and future possibilities, goes a long way to fair energy exchange. I mean, as I've said before in other videos, if you are trying to create a relationship with fairies, you have to exchange energy for energy. So you're wanting that acknowledgement for a relationship with them, and you've got to acknowledge them right back. And part of acknowledging them is not just, working with the land or saying you believe or anything like that, but it's actually gaining knowledge about who they were, who they are, and ultimately what you feel towards them and what they could be for you. And that's extremely important in a fairy practice, in my personal opinion. It's been important for my personal fairy practice. So I have a couple books for you that I think will really help you out. Most people do know this book. It is the one by Thomas. I think it's pronounced Kitely, but I'm not completely sure. Anyways, I don't know if it's out of print, but if I can find any of the links I can for any of the books, decks, whatever, I will put down in the description. And if I can't find them, I'm sorry if they're not there, okay? You might be able to find some at secondhand books and stuff like that. This one I got from my grandmother. She found it a long time ago, had it as she was raising grandkids, and she would tell stories out of this book. And it's the World Guide to Gnomes, Fairies, Elves, and Other Little People. Now, this is a really cool book because it doesn't just have like little stories in it. It actually talks about like the origins of fairy. It talks about the word fairy. It talks about fairy in Persian romance, Middle-aged romance, Scandinavian elves, dwarves, and talks about the legends of those. It's got folktale in it from all of that. And it talks about Northern Islands, Germany, it's going into kobolds and nixies, and Switzerland, Great Britain, Celts. It has tons and tons and tons of information in it. And then it's got illustrations for everything too. It goes into fairy mythology, and in the back it has a really extensive index, okay? And then you even get poetry towards the back of the book too. Now, I have not read this entire book. You are looking at over 500 pages. This is a giant book to read, particularly for me, but this is a great first kind of resource for anybody who's looking to learn more about fairies, okay? And you're not just going to learn, you know, pretty fairies. You're going to learn goblins, and you're going to learn kobolds, and you're going to learn nisas, and you're going to learn all different kinds, okay? And that's important because fairy, okay, fae is a like an umbrella term. Fairy can also not just represent fairies, but it can also represent a place, fairy. So there's a lot up for interpretation in a lot of this stuff, and you kind of got to find your own way with it. But reading these kind of books help you work that out for yourself. The next one I would really recommend is the Fairies, Elves, and Goblins, the Old Stories. This is a newer book. The Thomas one is older, more like Back and Grimm type stuff. This one was originally published in 2013, and this one is literally just a bunch of stories. It is stories that have, let me see if I can do like a little like flip through with, that's got images in it, and it just tells stories, which is great if you're looking up like a folklore for fairy specific stories. And I love that, okay? I absolutely love that. It really gives you a sense of things, and it's not talking about fairies like they are today, like Tinkerbell and stuff. You're talking about, you know, older versions of fae, and back when they used to tell them kind of stuff. The next one I would highly recommend if you are just getting started and wanting to learn more is A New Dictionary of Fairies by Morgan Demler. She does have a YouTube channel. This book I haven't read completely because it's more like it's like a dictionary. It talks about names. It talks about glamour. It has a whole bunch of different stuff in it, and like for example, it talks about Oberon. It's got the big name fairies. You know, we're not you know, she's talking about privacy with the fairies. She's talking about second sight. There's a lot of dictionary related content in this about fairies or fae in a sense. And it's mainly focused on Celtic and Western European fae, not necessarily like the Isle of Man kind of fairies, which I do have a book for that one. It is, that one is, John T. Cruz did one, and this one is very specific. It's folklore that dives in traditions for the British Isles and mainly focuses on just like the British Isles area of fairies, which is really great. And this one also like has a lot of really, really great information. One of the things that I highlight in my books and stuff like that. And so here's something that's in this book that I want to read to you because I think it's important for interaction. It says, anyone who genuinely and honestly deals with the fairies on their terms may expect good treatment. Keep that in mind as you are working with the fae. Your honesty, your authenticity, all that kind of thing is going to go a long way towards your relationship with fairy. And sorry for any noise that you hear. My husband is out working on things. Anyway, so this is also a very great book for getting involved with fae, getting to learn fae. Another one is Fairycraft by Emily Carding. I did a whole series on my YouTube channel for this book where I went through the whole section. This is all about connecting. It's all about getting in touch with the fae energy, with those acknowledgements, with getting in touch with the fae in general, and creating that start of a relationship, which is fantastic, by the way. And then the last book I have, okay, that you should read, whether you have the cards or not, is The Fairies Oracle. And the Oracle is by Brian Froud, and the text is by Jessica Macbeth. This is an amazing book. Like, even if you do not have the cards, if you get the chance to pick this book up, it's a wonderful book. It talks about connecting with the fae. It talks about the other world. It talks about so many things. And if you don't know who Brian Froud is, he is pretty prolific in the fairy world. And, you know, he does movies and stuff like that. You're talking like Dark Crystal. You're talking like Labyrinth. That's the Brian Froud, okay? And he is very much in touch with the fae realm. So get this book, even if you don't get the cards. But if you can get the cards, that's one of the decks I would recommend you work with if you're trying to connect more fully with the fae, because the cards are absolutely stunning. They have a great energy to them. I actually own 2 of these decks. One is my personal deck, and this one is for whatever else I want to use it for. But my personal deck is actually missing a card, so that's why I don't use it for anything else but me. But they go really well together, and they're great for that connection. They're great for getting in contact with your side of the Fae mixed with the relationship that you want to create with the Fae. The other decks that I have that I would recommend you work with for your interactions with Faerie, Fairy Lights Tarot. This deck is very unique. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing. You can find it on YouTube if you really want to, but it would be a very long video if I went through the whole process. The basic idea is that this is a very fairy realm style deck, okay? And the artist created the deck like as a full picture, cut the picture in half, and one picture might be a major arcana and one picture might be the Three of Swords. They go together and they create a really unique reading. So if you get the opportunity, look this deck up, and it's one of the ones that I very much enjoy using with connection with Fae, because it has a old world Fae energy to it, not the new Tinkerbell style, but the old world Fae energy to it, which I really like. So, and I like having that double meaning where if you pick a card, then sometimes you have that extra card that might tell you something about the card that you've pulled. And this deck incorporates that by using the pictures that go together, which is really neat. So if you get the opportunity, take a look at that on YouTube. There's lots and lots and lots of walkthroughs and talks about this deck. So be sure to check it out if you're really that interested. The other one I have been enjoying working with recently is the Forhaxa Tarot by MJ. And she's the lady who did the Crow Tarot. This deck is unique. It provides its own kind of folklore with Fae and her own interactions with the fairy world. And I enjoy that kind of thing. I don't want the Disney version of connections with Fae. When I'm connecting with Fae and when I'm looking for ways to connect with the Fae, I am looking for people who have connected with the Fae and how they may have managed to do that. I want to hear their experience. I want to know what led them into it. I want to know how they got involved into it. I want to know what interactions they actually have. And that's why I like this deck, is because it does talk about walking in the fairy world. And it is a Fae deck. The cards are also gorgeous, by the way. Then my favorite one, and I don't know that it's like my top favorite. Like, these are the ones I would use for connection. But my favorite one, and I love the artwork in it, is Fairy Enchantment deck by Ian Daniels. It has, oh my goodness, my husband, I swear, I'm so sorry, everybody. There's not much I can do about it, so I'm very sorry about that. But this deck, and I'm going to pull it out and show it to you, it has soul cards in it. And it's got a very unique process about working with the cards in a magical or enchanted way. The book sucks, okay, just so you know. Not as in that the information in it sucks, because it has a ton of great information, but in the sense that it is literally coming apart. It is not, it's not stuck together, okay? Like, the pages are coming out and everything. And so if you get the chance to get the bigger book with this deck, I would do that instead. Anyways, the backs are very unique. This is not the kind of deck that you use necessarily for divination, though you can. It's more on use with you personally, and like your sun, moon, and rising cards, and the different Fae you can actually interact with. Like, these are the fairies, the gods or goddesses or whatever, the Fae, the Fae queens and kings and stuff like that to work with. This is an emblem that they work with. And then it's like it's a whole thing, okay? I even have this on my channel that you can look at. If you want to look up the Fairy Enchantment deck on my channel, you can. It's under my fairy stuff. I have a fairy playlist. But anyways, what you do is, if you pull 3 cards or you work with your own personal sun, moon, and rising stuff, you would use these symbols as your magical working, okay? And then you would pick from these words in an order that creates a theme of your working, right? So this one would be initialize, because that's the first card, initialize, accomplish, because that's the second card, and nemesis, that's the third card. Now that doesn't really work for me, so I can change them around, pass them down, 99 bottles of beer on the wall. Anyway, so then I can do banish and boundless for the second card. Banish is the first card, boundless is the second card, and the third card is fulfillment. So I don't like that either. So I'm just going to mix this around again and see what happens, right? So the first card is initialize, the second card is negative, and the third card is fulfillment. So that would be more something like I would work with. I wouldn't want to work with negative stuff. So I would pull that out. I would say that that's something that I would not want to work with. So I would add that to my workings. And you can even pick the cards that have these different things on it that you want to use as a theme for spell work or energy work or something like that. Then on top of that, okay, on top of that, because you have your runes that you can add into your candles or your workings or whatever, then there's these different items on each card, okay? And you only pick one. So you don't need to work with all three of the first one, all three of the second one. You pick one from each card that you want to work with. So maybe I want something that is clear topaz on my counter in the russet color, right? And I want to do it during the winter equinox. And then I want to use ash, okay? And then I might want to use a bowl, right? And then maybe I want to do it facing north. So these cards have a lot going for them. And now the art is absolutely stunning on all of these cards, by the way. So if you're really looking for that interaction with the Fae, this could really, really help you. And the cards are beautiful. Like I said, walkthrough is on my channel, and so is some of the readings you can do with this kind of deck. And it is an indie deck. So that's what I have about my Fae workings for decks and books. The last thing I'd like to mention is you. And what I mean by you is we all have our own way of being who we are, of interacting with things. Sometimes it's through art, sometimes it's through music, sometimes it's through collaging or poetry or writing, or there's so many different things. And the Fae enjoy those kinds of things. One of the best ways you can honor Fae and your relationship with them is to provide offerings that accommodate you. So I make clay pieces. So I will make Fae out of clay. And that is my way of honoring them. And these aren't specifically offerings. They are a kind of offering, an energy offering of my creativity for them to be produced in a way that I would see them, in a way that they want to be seen by me. So that's how I use it. I also do poetry. So I've done fairy poetry and I've read it aloud to them, at my fairy altar. You can even have a fairy altar, which I do have. It's up here, by the way, which you can't see. Let's see. Can I do this? You can kind of see some of my Fae up there. All of these are fairies of some sort. And I'm going to have a walkthrough on my channel of my fairy altars. You can find that under my altar, stuff. But the whole point is when you're making connections with anything, you have to make accommodations for who you are and what you're capable of. Because that authenticity, that truth for yourself, is going to go a lot further with those relationships than anything else that somebody else does that you want to try. Go ahead and try things. Go ahead and try anything that you want that other people have done that you think might be good for you. You're going to learn through those. You're going to experience through those, and you're going to find your own way. So get a journal, write down those experiences, see where it leads you, and just know that you are a very big part of how that relationship's going to work out. And yes, there are, not so nice Fae. That's something you're gonna have to deal with. There's also not so nice gods. I mean, the reality is anywhere you look in your spiritual world, you're going to find the nice and the not nice. So don't worry about being afraid of them. Have a healthy respect for them and your relationship with them, and you're going to get a lot further. So I hope this was helpful for you. I hope that you were able to take some inspiration from me, and I hope that your journey with the Fae is a pleasant one. So thank you so much for watching. Have a very great day. You can ask questions down in the comments, and I will do my very best to answer them. I am not a all high mighty being of Fae stuff. I'm just not. There are tons of channels out there. I can even list some of my favorite ones down in the description that I enjoy watching, and you can go from there. So don't just take my word for it. Go out and experience it. Thank you so much for watching.